Hello, dear ones. We are talking today about the power of meditation and why we, should show up on our mats or on our cushions or just breathe with ourselves when we're driving in the car. It doesn't have to be some fancy set-aside time. It can actually be integrated into our lives. But meditation is often this thing that we, in some capacity, based on what we've heard about it, think that it would be good, but we don't make it a point to actually do it. And sometimes that's a factor of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't ever get my mind to shut off. Pro tip, it's not actually about that, but that's a story for another day. And so the biggest kind of call to action, the biggest priority that I hear about related to meditation is this idea of stress relief. And we live in this world and this very fast-paced kind of life where we're in constant cycles of stress again and again and again. And so we know in a sense that stress relief is important, but I don't feel like most of us really deeply understand what's going on in the body and being when that's happening. So I really wanted to break down this idea of stress and stress relief and actually understand its impact on our systems and on our lives. So again, we live in these constant cycles of stress, which leads to depletion, which leads to exhaustion, and not just being tired, exhaustion at depth. We have no capacity to to feel and be engaged and be meaningfully productive and or present in our lives. When we're in those constant cycles of depletion, exhaustion, it actually shuts down very necessary functions in our physiology. So when we're in a constant cycle of stress, when those pathways are activated in our bodies, and basically in this day and age with all that we experience and all that we are confronted with on a moment by moment basis, it's a constant cycle. It's literally not turned off unless we actively nourish ourselves to help resolve that. And so it begins to shut down necessary functions. When we're in that fight, flight, or freeze response, that cortisol response constantly, our bodies literally cannot break down and assimilate food. So very basic functions of feeding ourselves actually don't do a great job when we're in these cycles of stress. We sleep but don't actually feel rested. We, these very basic necessary functions, the body prepares us to respond to the stress. And so it's shutting down these our healing and resiliency factors because it's constantly waiting to respond in big ways to the stress. And it's firing these very exhaustive and very taxing pathways in the body. So it actually depletes us, and not just from a I don't feel rested perspective, but it's actually hard on the body. We age faster, and what that really means is we go through life without having our full capacity. So we're constantly at a disadvantage without some balance in all of that. And so it creates this overall experience of like density and heaviness. We're constantly carrying and filling up and not being able to operate in the way that we want to. And so there's this antidote to all of that, which is silence and space. Silence and space are substantive. We think of them as just sort of empty and what's really the point. And actually, there's incredible value in all of that. Inviting softness and understanding what the body is holding is the key to all healing. And it's the key not just to healing in a grander sense, but in this moment by moment, breath by breath, allowing us to feel more fully ourselves and to operate at our full capacity. That's our power in every day. So there's this really wonderful Instagram account / movement called the Nap Ministry. And they're really having this constructive and very wholehearted dialogue around rest and resiliency and creating space with ourselves. And so this is a quote from the NAP ministry: "Our toxic programming falsely teaches us that everything is controlled by us. It attempts to strip away our natural intuition and spirituality, making us believe that things are always what we see. Your resistance to rest is also a spiritual issue. You believe it's unproductive because it seems like nothing is happening. Healing is happening." We live in these constant cycles of stress and doing and productivity, and we feel like even if we're not doing something, that it's not worth our time. It's like we are not worthy in that space because we're not producing, or we're not taking care of the 27 things on our to-do list. And so we actually go into these very negative cycles when we have space, and we don't even enjoy it. And actually, because our physiology is in a constant state of stress, we're not actually resting even when we're not doing something. So it feels like we should be more balanced, but we're really not. And so having practices and tools that actively allow ourselves to invite softness, to invite healing, to invite space, helps to create this lightness of being and this resiliency at depth. And meditation is one of the most powerful and direct pathways to that. And it allows us to unpack all those things that we're carrying around, to unpack all of those judgments and expectations and perceived responsibilities, and actually come back to a power of discernment, of inspiration, of inviting and experiencing joy, of letting this breath, this heartbeat be enough, of letting ourselves be enough, and coming back to our power and our wholeness.